Welcome to the Art of We podcast. Today we are talking about something that we're calling the
dry cleaning incident.
dry cleaning incident. Before we get into that, I just want to give a shout out to Paul. Thank you, Paul, so much for leaving us a review. We cracked up with your messaging here. First of all, we're so grateful because it's so helpful for us to get this feedback, but also we love when you said, I do love it when you guys are really real, curse, poke fun at one another, and are vulnerable, being forthright in your personal challenges. And I think that maybe, hopefully, this episode will fit right into that. What do you think?
I think so. It seems like it will. We'll see
Thank
about
you.
the cursing, but yeah.
Thank you so much, Paul, for leaving us that review. It means so much to us. And so the dry cleaning incident. So the reason why we're going to be talking about this today is because we want to share the rupture that happened and what we learned from it. And there's still a little piece for us to clean up here, actually. So we're going to do a little bit of cleanup. It's not fully cleaned up. It's like 95% there, right?
That last 5% can be a little bit trickier than you think it's going to be, but yeah.
So we'll see how it goes.
For sure. Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we set the stage and just tell our audience, our listeners, what happened. Do you want to start, and then I can correct you where you're wrong? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, perfect. That's a good setup. So I was on my way home from work, and I had thrown this item in the back seat of my car that I wore, in full disclosure, probably 2 or 3 times without getting it dry cleaned. So it was time. It was overdue.
And you basically don't really have anything that goes to the dry cleaners.
Yeah.
So this is like your one thing, right?
Yeah. I mean, the only visit I think I can remember to the dry cleaner in the last year, maybe there are 2 visits to drop off your stuff. And maybe I had 1 or 2 items in there, but
You think that you've dropped off my stuff at the dry cleaners before?
yes.
Okay. I'm not so sure about that, but okay. Well, you did drop off my clothes after this dry cleaning incident because we had a whole conversation about it. But anyway, you had this piece, you threw it in the back of your car.
Yeah. And I was on my way home, and I knew I was going to be there. So the dry cleaner is on the way home, and there's a grocery store right next to the dry cleaner where we live. So I pulled into the parking lot, and in my mind, I generously and thoughtfully reached out to you and said, and I think it's important to emphasize the order of how I started the conversation, which didn't go great. But anyway, I said, hey, I just dropped off a thing at the dry cleaner, and I'm here at the store. Do you want me to get anything for us for dinner?
Right. I'm not even sure if you got past dry cleanings. I don't even know if you got the other words out of your mouth. Maybe.
I think there was yelling on the other side before I finished my sentence. But anyway, you got upset that I didn't take your stuff to the dry cleaner.
Before we knew it, it was like, it's almost like it's like a match where it's like you strike it and there's a flame all of a sudden, but you don't even know if the flame is coming because it's like, you don't even know when it's coming. So you might have to strike it a few times. But it was like just a conversation. And all of a sudden we're in this very big rupture and we're both pretty activated and triggered, right?
Yes,
So
definitely.
prior to this whole conversation, maybe a week or 2 before, you're like, hey, do we have a spot in the closet for dry cleaning? And I was like, yeah, it's in the cabinet. It's like, it's not the best place, but it's in the cabinet. And, that's where it is. Okay. So a little bit of important context there that there was a place for dry cleaning and a pile of dry cleaning.
Right.
Right.
Which I forgot that was a thing there. Anyway, I so thoughtfully and generously offered to pick stuff up at the store, but that was drowned out by the the reaction that was happening.
Well, I think your intent there never got heard because by the time you said, hey, I just dropped something off at the dry cleaners, I got really activated. And looking back, here's what not to do is start to yell at your person and say, what do you mean you just went to dry cleaners? Why didn't you take my dry cleaning? Like I just got really activated, and then my activation had you be very triggered and defensive, understandably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And then I was sitting there wondering, well, whatever happened to our commitment to assuming positive intent and listening generously, and like all of these agreements we have weren't in play as far as I could tell. And, we also have agreements to meet each other in unbalanced or dysregulated states with generosity and care. And I couldn't do that. I didn't do that with you. And I said things that I regretted. I think I said something like, "How dare you assume that I'm doing this to you," or something like that, or I don't remember the words, but I was pretty mad. And then I said something even more escalated of, I'm done with women doing this to me, or something like
Yeah.
that. I was really,
Yeah.
I was having this flashback of like so many women, my mom, my girlfriends, wife before you, first wife. Anyway, it was just like,
Doing what to you, though? This is the part, by the way, that we haven't cleaned up. It's like this statement of putting me into a category of women doing something to you that we never got really clear about.
of perpetrating violence or ill will. Yeah. Like somehow being accused of aggression against the person that I'm involved with.
So you have a wound with women of them accusing you of being aggressive when you weren't
I would say
aggressive.
it's more like being selfish or self-centered or being a part of the patriarchy. Like I felt like I was being framed as like a part of the patriarchy. Like I'm one of the white privileged, entitled, whatever guys on the planet who are fucking everything up. There you go, Paul.
Well, okay, so this is a little bit of a juicy topic for us because we have not totally cleaned this up yet. And when you say that you were being selfish, accused of being selfish, I think that you were being selfish because
Well,
there was
I
this
mean,
whole laundry pile of to go to the dry cleaning, and that was mine. And you didn't think about including that dry cleaning.
no, I didn't. And, unlike some of our household chore agreements that we do have, like I take the garbage cans out on trash day when I remember.
When you remember.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is my job and we have that agreement. We didn't have a shared agreement about who's taking the dry cleaning to the dry cleaners. So it was like, wait a second, I didn't make that agreement with you. So why are you busting me for an agreement I never made in the first place?
So I think we're a little bit at the crux of the I transition going from I to we conversation, which
Yeah.
is I really appreciate you being willing to have this conversation here because I think a lot of people could probably relate with what you're saying is like, hey, I didn't agree to that. And,
Well, it's kind of like the difference between me bringing flowers home spontaneously and then one day I come home and I don't have flowers in my hand and you're like, where are the fucking flowers? That's how it felt to me. It's like some kind of out of the blue blindside about an agreement that is framed up as, well, you didn't keep it.
well, the truth is that we don't regularly go to the dry cleaners. What you didn't know that I didn't share with you is that I actually, for some reason, I really, 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 really hate going to the dry cleaners. And so the fact that you put your thing in the car, drove to the dry cleaners and dropped it off and didn't consider that there might be more things that we need from the house to take to the dry cleaners really got me in this place of the I versus we conversation. And it's not that I'm right and you're wrong.
Yeah,
It's
when
just,
you shared that with me later, I told you that had I known that before, which I
yeah,
didn't know, really, I think that would have really changed the, consideration that you didn't get when I took my thing.
totally. And I think where I was coming from was we're both trying to operate at high levels in our different respective and collective days and careers. And, when I go to the store, I I just tend to never think, what do I only need? I'm always thinking about the we, and that's kind of my tendency to always think about the we. And it's not your tendency as much. And given that this was a place where I despised something I despise doing, I got really activated in that moment. And understandably, you got defensive. And then you dropped I'm sick of women doing this to me all the time. And then I was
I
like, whoa,
mean,
whoa, whoa.
it was inconsiderate. I mean, that's for sure. I did not consider. It didn't cross my mind to look for the pile of dry cleaning. It just
Mhm.
that didn't go through my head, and that's inconsiderate. I don't think there's any other way around.
And I think ultimately I think there's nothing wrong with that. I don't want to be the person who's like upset at home because something didn't go right or upset at the office because you didn't do something right. I don't want to be that person. And I have a wound around not being considered historically. And my wound got activated. Your wound got activated. Why don't we take a quick break and then just finish up this cleanup that we're going to do about your comment about I'm sick of women doing this to me. And then we'll share what we're committed to doing in the future when we find ourselves in a triggered situation. And also just really want to emphasize the importance of actually dotting our I's and crossing our T's around these impacts and why we want to finish this cleanup, because otherwise it just starts to build up in the background, as we've talked about before. And I'm not willing to let any residual thing that gets built up unconsciously or subconsciously, and then we are finding ourselves at a divide in the future. So
For sure. And I mean, the other piece I want to mention here that maybe is obvious to our dear listener is moving from orienting toward, what do I need to the updated operating system of what do we need and what does our partner need, and just having that bigger perspective is not easy to accomplish, and it's part of the work. It's not like a diagnosis of irreparable broken relationship that this comes up. It comes up all the time. So if it keeps coming up and it doesn't seem like there's progress happening, then that's another conversation. But we're just talking about the kind of routine maintenance and oil changes that you need in your relationship to make sure that it keeps rolling down the road.
absolutely, I'm so glad you said that. Okay, we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back. We hope you're enjoying this episode. I want to take a quick break to let you know about a gift we created for you and your partner. We compiled our top 10 relationship agreements that have been so powerful in supporting the success of our partnership that we even turned them into our wedding vows. These agreements help us stay connected, growing, and thriving as a couple, and they've been critical to help us create a kind of we that's way beyond what we've ever experienced before. You can download this free gift at KristaVanderveer.com. That's KristaVanderveer.com. Also, if you enjoy our podcast, it would be so meaningful to us if you left us a rating and review. Not only does it help others find us, but it gives us critical feedback on how we're doing. Thanks in advance, and now back to the episode. Welcome back. Okay, so I want to give you a lot of room and space to share where this comment was coming from. I know you shared a little bit already. And I can tell you that in the moment when I heard it, things started to escalate in my system. I started to become more dysregulated. I didn't know what was going on. I was having an experience of this feels like a very young part who's saying this. In any case, I want to make sure that there's nothing between you and I, that you're holding some sort of perspective that I'm doing something to you or I'm acting like, quote unquote, what women do to men. And so I want to just hand this mic over to you to let you share and take care of you and care for you and listen to you.
Well, I regret saying that to you, and I'm glad that the conversation opened a door to dealing with a deeper injury that has to do with layers of experience that I've had of people projecting their injury onto me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Women
not
specifically.
partners, my mom, different people over the years and particularly it seems like it comes up a lot with women for some reason, is like, you're not helping me, you're not doing enough, you're the reason why I can't have X, Y, or Z, or I'm not having the experience or the life that I want to live because of you or whatever.
Wow.
So I just am sensitive to piling on historical transgressions onto what the current problem is. That is a problem. It's a current problem. Like, I don't want you to have the experience of not being considered. I don't want to not consider you. That's for sure. Kind of like having this level 8 out of 10 reaction to me being in a learning process. It doesn't feel good to me, and and I think the thing is, in the past I've had people in my life who were much less willing to reflect on their own part. They weren't interested in growing in the way that you want to grow. We didn't have the same kind of relationship agreements. We weren't up to the same thing that you and I are up to. So it's just, I feel sad that I was doing the thing that I claim that I don't want you to do to me, which is to take all this historical stuff and layer it on top of what the current moment is.
Mm-hmm. Well, I thank you. And I actually think I was doing that to you because my wound of not being considered, particularly by men, specifically in my past, and my frustration of not being considered was the perfect setup here. And I threw that right at you, right when he said, I just dropped something off at the dry cleaners and you were about to ask me if I needed anything else. I did layer that, my historical wounding on top of you.
Yeah. And I picked up a rock and threw it right back at you. I didn't show up the way in an ideal world I would show up as the benevolent adult in the moment of like, wow, let's take a look at this. It sounds like a really big energy that's coming up over there. And I love
Right.
you. Let's look at it together. Instead of doing that, I went into my thing.
So it was the perfect dry cleaning incident setup that now we can refer to.
Yeah.
Yeah, both of us wish we would have done something different. And is there any way that you feel like in our partnership that I am blaming you for something that's not happening in my life? Like that I'm actually doing something that is activating this wound on a more less noticeable level? Because maybe that's something that we need to talk about.
Can't think of any place where that's happening in our day-to-day life. I think that we both have these younger parts that can flare up sometimes and, kind of do that, but I don't have that sense at all here with you.
It's so interesting because we just did this interview with this couple who shared after their divorce what they could see in hindsight about what made their partnership not work. This is episode number 99 with Dr. Jill Carnahan and Aaron Carnahan. And they thought that they were doing the deep work, and they admitted to places where they were avoiding pain and conflict. And there's always stuff, hindsight, that we can see, of course. I even get nervous. What are we not seeing with each other that could hurt us in the end?
Mm-hmm.
But I am so grateful that we're actually in the conversation deliberately about checking and looking as closely as we consciously can and staying on top of it. And for the people who are listening, being inside of a partnership where both people are really willing to look deeply and grow as much as they possibly can is a very kind of unique partnership to have. And I really trust our path, and I trust these road bumps, these activated parts that get to meet each other. And I'm grateful for incidents like this, even though it was painful for us to go through, because we get to grow, we get to understand each other better, we get to hopefully heal the wounds that are still left over and painful.
Yeah, it's tender, right? Wishing that we could have enough knowledge beforehand to prevent the ship going down or, some catastrophic end to a partnership. And I think that's why it's so important to normalize rupture and repair. And I can think of so many metaphors for this situation. It's like, I guess maybe the easy one that comes to mind is setting off on a big, I'm not a sailor, but I kind of borrowed this from the sailing community, maybe, of like going out on a big trip for, months on end and acknowledging that, there's going to be a time when there's a hole in the boat and you got to know you just accept that that's going to be part of your experience and you're going to bring enough knowledge and tools to have a fighting chance to save the boat when that happens, and
Right.
some boats you can save and some you can't. And, you only know what you know. So it's just like a really important perspective that having ruptures is a critical part of the growth and the strengthening in a partnership.
Absolutely. And moving forward, what we've learned from this, and we've already practiced it a little bit, we could probably do a better job as we gain more strength in this one. But I'm committed to next time that I find myself very activated suddenly after a comment that you make. I can get a little spicy sometimes, I admit, suddenly.
I'm glad you get spicy. I like your spice. Sometimes it burns my tongue a little bit, but
Totally. But rather than lead with spice, what I would like to do, because you said this would be helpful for you, specifically when this happens, is to say, I notice that I'm having a reaction instead of just bite your head off all of a sudden. And if you hear me say, I notice I'm having a reaction, that will be helpful for you because why?
because if I see or hear or understand that you're witnessing presence is online, then it's much easier for me to receive your spiciness, because my younger parts are not wondering, okay, is this like a crazy person that I'm trying to navigate dealing with here? Or is this, a loving, caring
Mm,
adult, spouse, partner who is having a tough moment? There's something different about that for me, because, again, I think it goes back to my childhood and having experiences where nobody was home, as far as like the witnessing part.
totally. And by witnessing, it's like a self awareness that I'm activated. And it's not just that my activation is taking me over
Right.
and I'm becoming the activation. It's like I have a part of me that can also witness myself and what's happening.
Again, it's like an ocean metaphor for me right now. I don't know. It's ocean day, I guess. But if you're getting yanked out in the undertow of your spiciness and wound and injuries with other men before me and so on, I like to know that there's a part of you that's still standing on the shore watching the process. Otherwise, it just feels like it turns into more of an emergency in my system.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I'm willing to keep lifting the weights in the gym of being with you without the witnessing presence there. I strive here with you to be strong enough to not be trying to put parameters on the ways that you express yourself, even in the most, you know, wounded or dysregulated
Messy.
or, yeah, whatever, messy. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
I would like to say that you and I want to arrive at a place where we can be extremely messy with each other and still trust that we have a foundation that's indestructible.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm working toward that, and I want to be able to give you that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I want to be able to give you and our partnership the knowledge that it needs when I'm going into something like that I also have myself too. It's not just that you need to take care of me in that moment, that I got my back also. And in terms of my wound, there's some pretty big stuff there around gender bias and inequities inside of power dynamics and all of this inside of the workplace, inside of my own family system, inside of most of my life growing up in certain ways. And a lot of that is my job to slow down and consider myself.
Mhm. Yeah, it makes
And
sense.
a lot of it is also supporting a greater level of consciousness about a we system. It's like both.
Yeah, maybe that's what I am really wanting when I say a witnessing presence, is like to know that you have your own back and that I'm not solely responsible for helping us get through what we're going to get through.
Right.
I think I just don't want to feel like I'm alone pulling the weight of getting through that rupture or whatever the thing is.
Yeah, totally. And sometimes it is going to be the person who has the most adult capacity in those moments to lead us to,
Right.
the more,
100%.
yeah, the more regulated conversation. But well, thank you. I feel really good with this conversation. I think that if there's anything else that comes up for you around this feeling of me doing something to you or me being one of the women who are doing something to you, I really, really, really want to get in there and work it some more, because I think that kind of wound, that kind of lens can be really unhealthy inside of a partnership, whether it's coming from me or coming from you. It just starts to put the person inside of a box that they probably can't get out of because there's no room for conversation.
Yeah, and on the flip side, I mean, the one of the beautiful possibilities that we embrace here is being able to bring all those historical, archetypal, what have you, wounds, and really put them on the examination table and check it
Right.
out together
Totally.
and integrate them together.
Yeah. I think that that's something that we do a pretty darn good job of. And I love that about our partnership. I'm so grateful.
Me too.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the conversation. Listeners, we hope that this was helpful in some way for you inside of your partnership when the flames are suddenly large and hot. And just normalize also that we get into ruptures and conflicts that are painful and challenging and take us a little bit of time to get out of.
We'd love to hear your comments. If you have similar things you've been through or other topics you'd like for us to cover, please let us know.
We'd love to hear from you. Have a great week.